This video is based on official law enforcement statements, court documents, expert forensic analysis, and verified reporting from major news outlets. If I was the kidnapper, I would be extremely concerned right now, because using investigative genetic genealogy, he will be identified. Those words came from CeCe Moore, the chief forensic genealogist at Parabon Nanolabs, a scientist who has helped solve more than 300 cases using DNA evidence. She did not say he might be identified. She did not say there is a chance. She said he will be. On the morning of March 24, 2026, a single headline broke through 53 days of silence. FBI analysis discovers new breakthrough in Nancy Guthrie case. That word, breakthrough, carries enormous weight in a case that has produced no arrest, no named suspect, and no public answers. Just a masked figure on a doorbell camera and a family pleading into cameras, hoping someone somewhere is watching. But is this a genuine step forward or just another headline in a case already full of them? The answer lies not in how the media framed it, but in what law enforcement actually said the day before that headline ran. And what they said, on record, in a direct broadcast interview, is more significant than any headline has captured. Before we go further, subscribe to The Investigation Room and hit the notification bell. We examine the forensic evidence, track the investigative threads, and break down every verified development in this case with the seriousness it deserves. Leave a like if you want to see this case resolved, and tell me in the comments, do you think the DNA analysis will produce an identification? Now, let's get into it. To understand why what happened on March 23rd matters, you need to understand the investigative landscape that preceded it. Nancy Guthrie was 84 years old when she disappeared from her home in the Catalina Foothills neighborhood, north of Tucson, Arizona, in the early hours of February 1st, 2026. She is the mother of Savannah Guthrie, co-anchor of NBC's Today Show. She had lived in the Tucson area for more than 50 years. She attended church every Sunday. She was, by every account from people who knew her, a woman of sharp mind, deep faith, and complete independence. On the evening of January 31st, her son-in-law, Tommaso Cioni, dropped her at home after a family dinner. Her garage door opened at 9:48 p.m. and closed at 9:50. She was inside. She was safe. She was never seen again. At 1:47 a.m. on February 1st, her doorbell camera was disconnected. The FBI later recovered footage from back-end servers showing a masked, armed figure approaching the front entrance and deliberately disabling the device. At 2:12 a.m., a motion sensor detected a presence at the front of the property. No video. At 2:28 a.m., the app monitoring Nancy's pacemaker lost its connection to her phone. Her phone never moved. She did. Blood on the front porch was confirmed by DNA testing to be hers. The FBI described the suspect as male, approximately 5 feet 9 to 5 feet 10, with an average build, wearing a black 25-liter Ozark Trail hiker pack sold exclusively at Walmart. More than 19,000 tips had been received. A dedicated task force involving multiple FBI agents and 5 Pima County Sheriff's Department officers assigned exclusively to the case had been working every day since early March. No arrest, no named suspect, no public answers. That is where the investigation stood going into the third week of March 2026. And then, on 2 consecutive days, 2 significant things happened that collectively represent the most substantive public movement this case has seen since the FBI released the doorbell camera footage on February 10th. On March 21st, 2026, the Guthrie family released a public statement through KVOA News 4 Tucson as part of a special broadcast titled "Bring Her Home: The Disappearance of Nancy Guthrie." The statement was read by Savannah Guthrie, joined by her siblings Annie and Cameron. Its language was measured and deliberate, the kind of language that comes not from raw grief expressed in the moment, but from careful coordination with the investigators working the case. The family said, "We are deeply grateful for the outpouring from neighbors, friends, and the people of Tucson. We are all family now. We continue to believe it is Tucsonans and the greater Southern Arizona community that hold the key to finding resolution in this case. Someone knows something. It's possible a member of this community has information that they do not even realize is significant." They asked the public to search their memories around 2 specific timeframes: January 31st and the early morning hours of February 1st, the documented night of the abduction. and in an edition that had not appeared in prior public appeals, the late evening of January 11th. That is not a routine detail to include in a family statement. Families in active kidnapping investigations do not add specific dates to public appeals, without direct coordination with the investigators working the case. The Guthrie family would not have directed the public toward January 11th unless law enforcement told them that date required fresh attention. The statement continued, "No detail is too small. It may be the key. We miss our mom with every breath, and we cannot be in peace until she is home. We cannot grieve. We can only ache and wonder. Our focus is solely on finding her and bringing her home. We want to celebrate her beautiful and courageous life, but we cannot do that until she is brought to a final place of rest." That language, brought to a final place of rest, is the language of a family that has begun to prepare for the possibility that Nancy may not come home alive. It is also the language of a family that has not given up, that understands the search continues, and that is using every platform available to keep pressure on the investigation. The family statement pointed at January 11th. The next day, the sheriff confirmed why. On March 23, 2026, Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos sat down for a direct broadcast interview with local Tucson station KOLDOTO. What he said in that interview is the most operationally significant public statement any law enforcement official has made in this case since it began. He said, "We do believe that something occurred on January 11th, and that's with the FBI's analysis of the equipment and digital stuff they've done." Read that sentence carefully, because it is precise in a way that matters forensically and investigatively. He did not say investigators are pursuing a promising lead. He did not say something may have occurred. He said, "We do believe," present tense, active conviction. And he grounded that belief not in a neighbor's recollection, not in a community tip, not in social media speculation. He grounded it in the FBI's own forensic analysis of the equipment and digital evidence at the scene. That is the sheriff of the county where this crime occurred, in a direct broadcast interview, confirming that the FBI's independent technical examination of the Nest camera hardware and the associated digital systems produced a specific and sustained belief about a specific date, January 11th, 3 weeks before Nancy Guthrie disappeared. To understand why that statement qualifies as a genuine breakthrough requires understanding what the word actually means in an active kidnapping investigation. A breakthrough is not an arrest. It is not a named suspect. It is not a solved case. In law enforcement terms, a breakthrough is a material shift in the investigative picture, a new anchor point around which all other evidence can be organized. Investigators have been working with thousands of pieces of evidence for 53 days. A breakthrough is not the completed picture. It is the moment they find the corner piece that tells them what shape the puzzle actually is. Before that corner piece, everything is relative. After it, the picture begins to hold. For 53 days, this investigation had been running without a single publicly confirmed anchor date before the night of the abduction. No prior contact established on record. No confirmed date for a prior visit to the property. Not one law enforcement official had gone on record to say that something specific happened at this property before February 1st, until March 23rd. That is what changed, and that is why it matters. To understand the full forensic weight of January 11th, you need to trace how that date entered the investigation, why it generated confusion, and why the FBI's independent analysis resolves that confusion in a way that cannot be walked back. The first public signal about January 11th came through the Ring Neighbors app, the community safety network used by residents across the Catalina foothills. An alert was posted, asking residents to check their security cameras for footage from January 11th between 9 p.m. and midnight. The alert also mentioned a suspicious vehicle spotted on Via Entrada, a street close to Nancy's home, around 10 a.m. on January 31st. Neighbors who later spoke to media described receiving multiple visits from FBI agents and Sheriff's Department personnel, asking specifically about that date. Michelle Young, a longtime area resident, told Fox News that investigators had come to her home 5 times. On one of those visits, with both FBI and Sheriff's Department personnel present together, they specifically brought up January 11th. Then came the image question. The FBI released multiple images from Nancy's doorbell camera on February 10th. Most of the images showed the masked suspect with his full equipment, the backpack, the holster, the gloves. But in a second photograph, the same masked figure appeared at the property without the backpack, without the visible weapon, without the tactical configuration of the other images. Two law enforcement sources told Fox News Digital that this image was taken on a different day from the others, indicating the masked suspect had visited the property in advance of February the 1st. The date those sources associated with that image was January 11th. The Pima County Sheriff's Department responded with a written statement acknowledging that the images show the suspect in different stages of attire, but emphasizing that no official date or timestamp had been confirmed. Sheriff Nanos told NBC News in a phone interview that it would be purely speculative to suggest the photograph was from a different day. That is where things stood for weeks. The image without the backpack generated significant public discussion about a possible prior visit, but without an official timestamp, nothing could be confirmed. Then came the Google complication. When Nanos explained the January 11th focus to NBC News on March 22nd, he said that Google had initially told investigators the surveillance image of the suspect without the backpack was believed to be from January 11th. Google flagged that date as a possibility based on metadata analysis of the camera's cloud systems. On the basis of that Google assessment, investigators had asked neighbors for footage from that specific evening. The Guthrie family had been informed of its significance. And then Google walked back its own conclusion. The company told investigators it could not definitively determine that the image was from January 11th or from any specific date. Technical limitations in the metadata recovery process meant the initial assessment could not be confirmed. That retraction created a public perception that January 11th had been debunked, that the investigative focus on that date had been based on an unreliable data source and could not be sustained. That perception is what Sheriff Nanos corrected on March 23rd. Google's analysis and the FBI's analysis are two entirely separate forensic examinations of two entirely separate aspects of the same evidence. Google analyzed cloud metadata. The FBI analyzed the physical camera hardware itself and the associated digital systems using the Bureau's own Operational Technology Division, the same team that recovered the doorbell footage from residual back-end data when the camera was not even supposed to have retained anything. Two analyses. The same date, one retracted, one stands. The FBI's conclusion about January 11th did not come from Google's cloud data. It came from independent Bureau forensics. And when Nanos confirmed on March 23rd that the FBI's analysis of the equipment and digital evidence produced a sustained belief that something occurred on January 11th, he was confirming a conclusion that does not depend on Google's retraction in any way. The forensic confirmation of January 11th is significant in its own right, but its deepest significance is behavioral because it tells investigators something specific about the person they are looking for. If the FBI's conclusion is correct, and the sheriff has confirmed on record that they believe it is, then the masked figure who approached Nancy Guthrie's front door 3 weeks before the night of the abduction was not acting impulsively. He was not someone who saw a vulnerable target and made a decision in the moment. He was someone who came to that property on at least one prior occasion, without the full equipment he would use on February 1st, without the posture of someone executing a plan. He came to watch, to learn, to test the environment. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffendafer, writing publicly on her verified social media account on March 22nd, described that prior visit as what she believed was a trial run, a reconnaissance before the operation. She also noted that the moon on January 11th was in a waning crescent phase, while February 1st fell on a full moon. That is Coffendafer's independent, analytical observation, not a confirmed law enforcement finding. But the contrast is operationally meaningful. A person planning a nighttime operation at a specific residential property would note how light levels change across the lunar cycle. A waning crescent provides significantly more darkness than a full moon. What a confirmed prior visit tells investigators is this: the planning window for this crime is longer than the evidence from February 1st alone would suggest. A longer planning window means more exposure, more movements in and around the neighborhood over a greater span of time, more moments where this person was somewhere that can be documented, more opportunities to have been seen, recorded, or remembered by someone who does not yet know what they saw. If the suspect was at that property on January 11th, his DNA may not have been deposited only on February 1st. It may exist at or near the property from that earlier visit. In a case where DNA is the central biological evidence, that is not a minor consideration. It is an expansion of the forensic picture. The reward structure currently in place in this case is itself a measure of how seriously the situation is being treated. The Guthrie family has offered $1 million for information, leading to Nancy's safe recovery. The FBI has independently offered $100,000 for information leading to her location or an arrest. Tucson Crime Stoppers added $12,500 through its 88 Crime Fund. The combined total exceeds $1.2 million, making this one of the largest publicly announced reward packages associated with any missing persons case in recent Arizona history. As of this investigation, that reward remains unclaimed. Nobody who knows something has stepped forward to collect it. Sheriff Nanos was asked in the same cold interview whether he believed this crime could happen again. His answer was not a reassurance. It was a warning. He said, "Don't think for a minute that because it happened to the Guthrie family, you're safe. No. Keep your wits about you." That statement, from the top law enforcement official in the county, is telling the residents of the Catalina foothills and Tucson, broadly, that a potential predator remains free. It is not the language of a law enforcement official who believes the suspect is contained or neutralized. It is the language of a law enforcement official who is being honest about an open threat. The weight of that warning is not separate from the investigation. It is part of it. It tells us that 53 days in, investigators have not placed this person in custody, or even under such surveillance that they can credibly say the public is not at risk. Whatever good evidence Nanos has described as existing in front of the investigation, it has not yet produced an outcome that removes the threat. The forensic backbone of this investigation, the thread that CeCe Moore says will eventually lead to an identification, is the DNA evidence recovered from Nancy Guthrie's property. On February 19, 2026, Sheriff Nanos confirmed to NBC News correspondent Liz Kreutz what investigators had been working to establish since the first days of the case. Unknown DNA, genetic material not belonging to Nancy Guthrie or to anyone known to have had regular close contact with her, had been found inside her home. Nanos said investigators believed it could belong to the suspect. Then he identified the complication directly. The sample was mixed. A mixed DNA sample in forensic terms contains genetic material from more than one contributor. This is more common than most people realize. When a suspect moves through a space that a victim has lived in for years, touching surfaces that have also been touched by residents, family members, service workers, and visitors over time, genetic material overlaps. Isolating one person's DNA from a mixture requires an additional analytical step. Bioinformatics scientists must process the combined profile to extract the suspect's genetic contribution before that profile can be submitted to any identification database. It takes longer, it requires a higher level of precision, and Nanos was transparent about the timeline, acknowledging that results could take weeks, months, or in the most difficult scenarios up to a year. Separately, a glove was recovered from a roadside location approximately 2 miles from Nancy's home. It appeared to match the type visible on the suspect in the FBI-released footage. The glove's DNA was submitted to CODIS, the FBI's National Criminal DNA Database, which contains approximately 22 million profiles from individuals who have been previously arrested or convicted of qualifying offenses. The result came back as no match. Further analysis traced the glove's DNA to a worker at a nearby restaurant who had no connection to the investigation. That finding eliminated the glove as a direct evidential link to the suspect, but it did not affect the central DNA evidence. The foreign DNA found inside Nancy's home, on a surface inside the property itself, remains the primary biological evidence in the case, and that evidence is under active analysis. CeCe Moore is the chief forensic genealogist at Parabon Nanolabs, a Virginia-based laboratory that specializes in forensic genetic genealogy. She has helped investigators solve more than 300 cases using DNA evidence. She is not a speculative commentator. She is one of the people who actually does this work. Speaking to the Today Show on February 19, 2026, Moore addressed the mixed sample challenge directly. Her assessment was calibrated, grounded, and specific. She said, "We've had success with a lot of cases with mixtures, but it does take a little more time because there's an extra step after that profile is created. Then we have to have the bioinformatics scientists work on that file to extract out the suspect's DNA. We have successfully worked a lot of mixture cases in investigative genetic genealogy." She noted that some mixtures are relatively straightforward. If the sample contains primarily the victim's DNA and the suspect's DNA, disentangling the two contributions can be done with reasonable efficiency. The complication increases when there are multiple contributors, and the target profile's contribution is proportionally smaller. Whether the Nancy Guthrie sample falls into the simpler or more complex category has not been publicly disclosed. What Moore did say, without qualification, is that the presence of unknown DNA inside the home made her extremely hopeful, because its location at the scene made it more likely that it could be definitively tied to the suspect. Moore also raised a theory about how the suspect may have deposited DNA without knowing he was doing so. The FBI released footage shows what she and other analysts described as a bite light configuration, a flashlight held in the mouth to free both hands while the suspect worked at Nancy's front door. Moore explained that a person does not hold an object in their mouth for an uninterrupted period of time. At some point, it comes out. When it does, saliva transfers to the gloves. And when gloved hands touch any surface inside that home, any door, any wall, any object, DNA follows that saliva transfer. As careful as he was to try to not leave his DNA, Moore said, he would have taken that out of his mouth, and he would have immediately had his DNA all over the outside of that glove, and he had to have touched something. In March 2026, Moore went further. Speaking on the News Nation podcast, The Truth of the Matter, she recommended that investigators return to Nancy's home and conduct an additional round of forensic swabbing. Her recommendation accounted for the time elapsed and the fact that the home had since been accessed by family members. She said, "I would still go back and re-swab parts of that house and look for even a rootless hair. We can solve these cases now with just a rootless hair. We have been able to solve cases with really old DNA. DNA is actually pretty hardy. And so, I believe if they haven't collected his DNA, it is still at that crime scene somewhere, and they should revisit it, even though it's been open to the family." A rootless hair, a hair shed without its follicle, retains mitochondrial DNA. Modern forensic analysis can extract a genetic profile from that level of material and submit it to an investigative genetic genealogy database. This is not a theoretical capability. It has been used to solve cases. Moore's recommendation was grounded in 300 successfully resolved investigations. To understand why CeCe Moore said the suspect will be identified, you need to understand the specific process she is describing. Because investigative genetic genealogy is not the same as running a DNA sample through CODIS. It works differently, its reach is fundamentally different, and its track record justifies the confidence Moore expressed. Once a usable DNA profile is extracted from crime scene evidence, it is uploaded not to a law enforcement database, but to a genealogy database. The two databases currently available for law enforcement use are GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA. These are platforms where private citizens have voluntarily submitted their own DNA, primarily for personal ancestry research. Both allow law enforcement access by opt-in agreement. Together, they contain fewer than 2 million profiles. That is a fraction of CODIS. But the profiles in these genealogy databases are connected to family trees, to names, to ancestral records stretching back generations. When a crime scene DNA profile is uploaded, the analysis does not look for a direct match. It looks for partial matches. Genetic material shared between the unknown suspect and individuals in the database who are related to him, but who are not themselves the suspect. Cousins, second cousins, third cousins. People who share enough DNA with the person investigators are looking for, that their presence in the database creates a detectable signal. From those partial matches, forensic genealogists build a family tree, working backward through ancestry records, birth records, marriage records, census data, obituaries, and every other documented trace of family history. They construct the branches of the suspect's likely family structure. They narrow the tree. they eliminate branches that do not fit the geographic profile of the investigation, the physical description, the age range. They work down from hundreds of potential relatives to dozens, then to a handful, then to a single individual who fits every known parameter. That is how the Golden State Killer was identified in 2018 after 5 decades of investigation. Joseph James DeAngelo was a retired police officer in Northern California. He had committed at least 13 murders and more than 50 sexual assaults across the state over multiple decades. CODIS had his genetic profile associated with dozens of crime scenes and returned nothing. He had no qualifying conviction that required his submission to the database. When investigators submitted the crime scene DNA to GED Match, they found partial matches to distant relatives. Forensic genealogists built a family tree that eventually narrowed to a single individual, fitting the physical description in the geographic range of the crimes. Investigators followed DeAngelo to a Hobby Lobby store, swabbed his car door handle when he stepped away from his vehicle, and later retrieved a discarded tissue from his trash. Both samples matched the crime scene DNA. He was arrested in April 2018 and later pleaded guilty to 13 counts of first-degree murder. He is serving multiple life sentences. Brian Kohberger, who murdered 4 University of Idaho students in November 2022, was identified through the same methodology. DNA from a knife sheath left at the crime scene was run through IgG. The process took several additional weeks because Kohberger's ancestry included recent immigrant roots from Italy, which reduced the number of useful family connections in the available databases. But it worked. He was arrested less than 2 months after the murders and is currently awaiting trial. The variable that most directly affects the speed of the IgG process is the suspect's ancestry. CeCe Moore explained publicly that if the suspect has deep roots in the United States and primarily Northwest European ancestry, a partial match in the available databases could surface within minutes or hours. If the suspect's ancestry runs through Latin America with immigrant roots in recent generations, the available profiles in GED Match and Family Tree DNA thin considerably, and the process can extend to weeks, months, or longer. That variable matters specifically in this context. Tucson, Arizona, sits within approximately 12 miles of the Mexican border. The FBI's Phoenix field office has coordinated with authorities on both sides of the border as part of standard investigative protocol. Whether the suspect's ancestry is directly affecting the pace of the DNA analysis is something investigators have not confirmed publicly. It is a variable the forensic genealogy team is working through. What CeCe Moore has confirmed publicly, on record, speaking to the Today Show, is her conclusion about the eventual outcome. She said, "If I was the kidnapper, I would be extremely concerned right now, because using investigative genetic genealogy, he will be identified." She did not hedge that statement. She said, "will." While the forensic genealogy analysis is running in the background, a parallel investigative thread has been developing on the ground in the Catalina Foothills neighborhood, and the specificity of what the FBI has been asking residents tells us a great deal about where investigators believe the answer to the central question lies. The central question is not who the suspect is in terms of name and identity. That is what the DNA analysis is working toward. The central question that neighborhood investigators are trying to answer is how the suspect came to know enough about Nancy Guthrie's home, her routine, her neighborhood, and her habits to plan this crime with the precision the evidence reflects. Someone who can approach a specific doorbell camera at a specific residential property, position themselves to minimize capture, disable the device in under 2 minutes, and move through the house with the controlled deliberateness that the blood pattern inside the entrance describes, is not someone who arrived at this property without prior knowledge. That level of operational precision comes from preparation, from observation, from familiarity built over time. The FBI has been working to trace how that familiarity was built. News Nation correspondent Brian Enton, who spent more than 43 consecutive days covering this investigation on the ground in Arizona, confirmed through sources in mid-March that FBI agents had returned to the neighborhood and were asking about 2 specific things. The first was a property that had been vacated shortly before Nancy's disappearance. A neighbor had moved out. Agents were asking residents what they knew about that individual, the circumstances of the departure, and any interactions they had observed. Enton was careful in his reporting to note that investigators were not publicly suggesting the vacant property was directly connected to the crime. But in a case where every element of the investigative framework points to advanced planning and local knowledge, a neighbor who left the area in proximity to the abduction is a variable that cannot be set aside without examination. Retired Pima County SWAT Commander Bob Crayer, speaking to Parade magazine, provided context for why vacated properties matter in kidnapping investigations involving this level of operational preparation. A home that becomes empty gives someone familiar with the neighborhood a potential observation point, a place to monitor the activity on a residential street, to learn the routines, to watch who comes and goes, and at what time, to confirm, over multiple visits, that the patterns observed from a distance hold when observed from close range. The suspect who came to Nancy's home on February the 1st knew where the camera was. He knew what time of night to move. He knew how to disable the device immediately. That knowledge had to come from somewhere, and investigators are building the map of how it was acquired. The second thing the FBI was asking about was construction workers, and the specificity of the request is telling. According to Enton's reporting, agents were not asking residents for general observations about unusual activity in the neighborhood. They were asking for names. The specific names of every contractor and every individual worker active on construction projects in the neighborhood in the days and weeks before February 1st. Enton reported that a resident told him a friend whose home was under construction at the time was approached by FBI agents and asked to provide the complete list of every person who had worked on that project. That reporting is consistent with what multiple sources described independently. Former FBI agent Steve Moore, speaking to NewsNation, explained what that level of specificity means operationally. Agents asking for the names of individual construction workers is not investigative regression. It is the Bureau building a roster, an accountable list of every person with a legitimate physical presence in that neighborhood during the critical window. Construction workers on active job sites have a reason to be on a residential street for hours without drawing concern. They have sightlines to neighboring properties. Nobody questions a work truck parked on a Catalina Foothills street in the early morning hours. If someone was conducting surveillance of Nancy's home in the weeks before February 1st, while credibly present in the neighborhood, a construction crew's roster is exactly the population the FBI would need to work through and eliminate or identify. The third thread in the neighborhood investigation involves a nationally broadcast television segment. In October 2025, The Today Show filmed a feature segment with Savannah Guthrie returning to Tucson, her hometown. The filming took place on October 17, 2025. The segment aired in November 2025, less than 3 months before Nancy was abducted. The final stop in that segment was El Charro Cafe, which has operated continuously at its downtown Tucson location since 1922 and holds the distinction of being the oldest continuously family-owned Mexican restaurant in the United States. Savannah sat at El Charro with Nancy and her sister Annie. The three of them shared a meal, filmed on camera and broadcast nationally. Nancy told Savannah on camera, "It's so wonderful. Just the air, the quality of life. It's laid back and gentle." The segment was watched by millions when it aired. After Nancy's disappearance, it was watched again by millions more. A source told media outlets that there was significant internal reflection at NBC about whether the segment had inadvertently made Nancy a target by publicly placing her face, her location area, and her connection to a famous daughter before a national audience less than 3 months before she disappeared. According to Enton's reporting, FBI agents visited El Charro and questioned staff about the filming day. They asked whether anyone had seemed suspicious during the shoot, whether anyone had lingered around the crew or acted in a way that stood out. What the El Charro angle establishes is the investigative framework at work. The FBI is building a complete account of Nancy Guthrie's public footprint in the months before she was taken, tracking every documented location where someone observing from a distance could have identified her, cataloged her, begun building the knowledge base that the February 1st operation required. The common thread running through all of it, the construction worker roster, the vacant property inquiry, the restaurant visit review, is the same central question. How did whoever took Nancy Guthrie come to know enough about her to plan this crime with the precision the evidence reflects? The answer to that question is what investigators are assembling name by name, address by address, frame by frame. The word breakthrough has been used loosely in coverage of this case. It is worth being precise about what the current investigative picture actually contains and what it does not. What the FBI has confirmed through Sheriff Nanos on record is a specific belief reached through independent forensic analysis of the Nest camera hardware and digital systems that something occurred at Nancy Guthrie's property on January 11th, 3 weeks before the abduction. That belief is grounded in the Bureau's own Operational Technology Division, the same team that recovered footage from a camera that had been disconnected and that should not have retained anything from residual back-end data that the standard recording system had already overwritten. When that team reaches a forensic conclusion, it is not a guess. It is a product of the same methodology that recovered the doorbell footage itself. That conclusion, January 11th, as a documented prior contact, provides the investigation with something it did not have before, an anchor point earlier in the timeline, a specific date from which every other piece of evidence can be recalibrated. The DNA analysis is running. CeCe Moore has confirmed investigators are exploring investigative genetic genealogy options, and a federal law enforcement source confirmed to CBS News that investigators would be checking commercial DNA databases separate from CODIS. The same technology that identified Joseph James DeAngelo after 50 years and Brian Kohberger within 2 months is being applied to the foreign DNA found inside Nancy's home. The FBI has the names of construction workers active in the Catalina foothills in the weeks before February 1st. They are examining a neighbor who left the area before the disappearance. They have reviewed the filmed restaurant visit from November 2025. They are building the map of how knowledge of this target was acquired. What remains unknown is also precise. No suspect has been named. No arrest has been made. Sheriff Nanos said on Cold, "We have so much in front of us, and we believe we have good evidence in front of us. Will that dry up? Could I be wrong? Absolutely. Anything is possible, but we're not giving up." He also said separately to NBC News, "Right now, everything is speculative. We don't have anything in front of us that says, this is who did this, and this is why." Those two statements are not contradictions. They reflect exactly where this investigation is. There is good evidence. There is a confirmed anchor date. There is DNA under active genetic genealogy analysis. There is a neighborhood grid being mapped down to individual worker names, and there is a forensic clock running on technology that has brought down killers who believed they were beyond identification. Attorney Chad Cummings, speaking to Front Page Detectives in March 2026, outlined the 3 scenarios that could explain why no public arrest has been made, despite weeks of intensive investigation. The FBI has identified someone and is building the case to a prosecutorial standard before moving. The investigation has run into complications connected to the suspect's identity or geographic associations, or investigators have not yet closed in on a specific individual. He did not identify which he considered most likely. But the structure of what law enforcement has released publicly, the careful confirmation of specific investigative beliefs, the sustained focus on a single prior date, the stated confidence that good evidence exists, is more consistent with methodical prosecution preparation than with an investigation running without direction. Retired FBI Special Agent Greg Rogers told Parade in March 2026, "I am confident there is a good amount of familial research underway concerning the DNA samples found in the residence. There won't be any press releases concerning that if and until a potential suspect is identified. No press releases until there is something to put in one. That is how this technology works when it is working, quietly, methodically, and then, when it produces a result, definitively. The questions this case still cannot answer are real, and they matter. We do not know where Nancy Guthrie is. We do not know whether she is alive. We do not know who the suspect is. We do not know what drove the decision to target an 84-year-old woman in the Catalina foothills. We do not know whether the DNA sample will produce a complete enough profile for the genealogy analysis to reach an identification, or how long that process will take. We do not know whether the January 11th visit was reconnaissance for the February 1st abduction, whether there were additional visits between those dates, or whether January 24th, a date that investigators were also asking neighbors about, represents another documented prior contact. What we do know is that 53 days into this investigation, the forensic and investigative picture is more complete than the absence of an arrest suggests. The FBI's Operational Technology Division has produced a specific conclusion about a specific prior date, The foreign DNA inside Nancy's home is being processed through the same methodology that has solved cases the scientific community once considered unsolvable. The neighborhood is being mapped with a precision that traces every person with a legitimate reason to be near that property during the critical window. The FBI tip line is 1-800-CALL-FBI. Anyone with information from the late evening of January 11th, from the night of January 31st, or from the early hours of February 1st is asked to contact investigators. Anyone who knew someone whose behavior changed around those dates. Anyone who recognized something in the surveillance images but did not come forward. Anyone who has been carrying information they did not realize was significant. No detail is too small. The evidence is active. The investigation is not cold. And the person who walked into that home left something behind that a scientist with 300 solved cases has said publicly, on record, will lead to his identification. Now tell me in the comments, given what we know about the DNA evidence and the confirmed January 11th prior visit, do you think an arrest is weeks away or months away? And do you believe the suspect is local to the Catalina foothills area? If you want to be here when this case breaks, when the forensic result produces a name, when an arrest is made, when this investigation finally delivers the answer Nancy Guthrie's family has been waiting 53 days to hear, subscribe to the Investigation Room and turn on notifications, because when this case cracks, you will not want to find out about it after the fact. This investigation was presented with respect for Nancy Guthrie and her family. Our goal is to examine the evidence and search for truth. Nancy Guthrie was 84 years old, and she was, by every account, fully alive in every sense that matters. She was a mother, a grandmother, a woman of faith who showed up every Sunday. She was taken from her own home in the middle of the night by someone